Hello, everyone. My name is Kim Barker, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. I am the Vice President of the International Society for Organization, Development, and Change, and I met Peter D. Through a fellow colleague, a fellow ISODC colleague. What is ISODC? The International Society for Organization, Development, and Change is the leading international OD association. Our members are OD consultants, professors, students, corporations, nonprofits, NGOs, and anyone interested in building a strong OD network around the world, and anyone interested in creating a better world for us to live in. So I'd like to encourage you to go to ISODC and check out all we have to offer. We have newsletters, we have webinars such as this. We have the OD Journal, which is the most widely cited OD and Change journal globally. So again, please go to isodc.org and check us out. If you could go to the next slide, Peter. So again, my name is Kim Barker, and I'm the Vice President of ISODC. I also teach full-time at Eastern Michigan University. And I'd like to give a shout out to my hubby, Greg Barker. He has been helping me with some post-production work. So thank you very much, Greg. And as we're starting today, if you could just place in the chat box where you are in the world today, that would be very helpful. So I see we have some folks from, several from California, Santa Barbara, Palo Alto, Dallas, Texas, Oak Harbor, Washington, San Francisco, Paris, Vermont, Mountain View, California. Awesome. I guess I represent the Midwest. I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I'd like to personally welcome our president, Dr. Roland Livingston, the ISODC president here today. I just saw that he's on the call. Welcome. And then also, what perspective do you bring today? For example, are you an external consultant? Are you an internal consultant? Are you a line executive? Are you from HR? What perspective are you bringing to this call today? I would say I'm a scholar practitioner. And if you could just place that in the chat, what perspective you bring today. So we have external consultant educator, CEO, external consulting, management consultant, executive, HR, consultant, scholar practitioner, recent MSODC grad, looking to establish a career, NP, leadership. So I'm assuming that means nursing practitioner. No, nonprofit leadership. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. I would like to introduce my friend, my fellow PhD and OD friend, Joyce Reynolds Sinclair. I would like to welcome you, and it's my understanding you will introduce Peter from here.
Thank you so much, Kim. Yes, welcome everybody. I'm the Managing Director of GeoGroup Strategic Services, and in that role I've been designing and delivering online work and learning sessions since the turn of the century. I'm also a facilitator for Stanford Executive Education. Back in the 1900s, I was the director of OD, so I've combined OD and strategy. In 2016, I recommended that Peter consider offering his excellent Manage to Lead program virtually and he liked the idea and asked me to help him convert his face-to-face program to this powerful interactive online learning experience that we're doing in the overview today. So I'm delighted to be able to share that.
And I have Peter's book right here.
And thank you, Kim. Yes, Kim has been great. And so we've been offering this for a while. Peter's a professional CEO, and he's created over $1 billion worth of value in a number of companies. And he documented what it was that let him be so successful. And that's what he formed into a 3-day, 2 3-day courses that were combined. And then what we did 2 years ago is start moving this to a online 10-week, 2-hour session. And we've had wonderful results with that. So let me have Peter introduce himself a little bit more, but we are really delighted to be here and share with those of you who are on this call, this program. The really attractive part of it is that for an OD group is the emphasis on applied behavioral science theory.
Thank you, Joyce and Kim. It's, as always, a pleasure to work with you both, and also with all of your members in the ISODC community, where it's actually full of people who are just like those that I've worked with throughout my career that have helped me be as successful as I have. I feel like I owe a tremendous debt to all of you to have helped me over the years to take what you are espousing and teaching and learning and put it into action in a way that's really worked. And I look forward to sharing with you today how that has impacted my career and put into a form that I have been able to help others similarly. It started out, way back in the late 70s when I joined a startup that I helped over 20 years to grow to 10,000 people and $1 billion. And that run was so successful that I thought, there's something here that we have done that is different and new. So I created this platform called IntelliVen to serve as a way to test out what I'd learned in working with others to see if, in fact, they would get the same kind of value we did. And it turned out they did. So we had sort of one success after another where we were helping organizations meet their stated goals on time, usually actually ahead of time, and on target, usually actually ahead of target. So this is really working. And after a particularly successful run, the American University asked me to take what I'd learned here and put it into a form that we could share with others. So that, let me get a pen here. So the idea was sort of to take what we had learned from all of these experiences and put it into a form that we could share. And that turned into a book and the class. And then we offered the class at other universities. So it was American University, then Golden Gate, and University of San Francisco. And this was continuing to work. And so all of this content was feeding this wonderful pile here, but we were still having great results in the field. But what was interesting was we hadn't figured out how to take what we were doing in the classroom and make it available to other corporations to get more leverage and more broad utility from this. So what happened when we got involved with Joyce was we were able to put together a program that now sits on a learning system supported by the University of Massachusetts, University Without Walls platform called Manage to Lead. And it's the virtual version where we can take it to executives and their teams wherever they are, whether they're in Berlin or Scotland or Paris or South Africa or Australia or anywhere in the United States. You now have access to this. And this has been tremendously exciting for us to see over the past couple of years how this has worked. And it's been continued to be phenomenally successful. So that's what we want to share with you today. And what we'll do is spend a few minutes on how things are supposed to happen, why they don't, and then where this all comes together and makes an impact and helps people do what they're trying to do on time, on target, on budget. And we'll do that by focusing on first one of the 7 truths, and then an exercise so you can get a feeling for what it's like to be in the program and deal with a part of the content that we deliver in the first truth. And then we'll fly through the other truths, know that each one of them has an enormous amount of content that we can't really cover in an overview like this, but we can give you a taste of it. And that's what we'll do, something from each of the truths. And then spend a couple of minutes on the program itself. and then open it up for you to share comments, reflections, and turn over a closing poll for you. Okay, so what I want to do is talk about this idea to benefit cycle. So here's a leader who is going to come up with this idea about what to do going forward. You know, where's that idea come from? They could just think of it on themselves, sort of the pure genius of a CEO. They could get it from their team or from their employees. It could come from watching what others in their field are doing. It could come from outside consultants. But wherever it comes from, you know, a lot of times you think of that as strategy, coming up with a strategy. And as you can see in this cycle, coming up with the idea is just the beginning. It's only the first part of the whole process. How do you actually make it work? Well, first of all, the leader might turn it over to a team that says, what are the different ways we could do this? What would it cost? How hard would it be? What would be the risks? How would we manage it? And should we really do this? And say, yeah, well, let's do it. Then they come up with a plan to do it and get the word out, maybe put together a request for some help from outsiders or other experts, and bring a team together that implements the idea and gets it up and running. And then finally, it becomes part of the way things operate, and everything is up and to the right, and our benefits have been realized. So my question for you is, how often, in your experience, does an idea get implemented and turned into benefits as smoothly as you just see in this picture? You can use the chat to give us an idea. Maybe Kim, you can read out what you see.
So how often does an idea
become implemented and turned into a benefit as smoothly as this cycle shows? Because if it happened smoothly all the time, you wouldn't need this program. You wouldn't need our help.
We have two rarelies, 15%.
Yeah.
10 to 15%.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of data we usually.
50%, one person,
right.
50%.
Some people say that fully 70% of all change initiatives fail to meet their potential as originally envisioned. And that may be overstating it, but the reality is we could be doing better as a world. And
President Rowland said it usually doesn't work that easily.
That's right. Well, thank you all for your input on that. So let's look at what we do to change the game and change the results and make it much more likely that your results will be realized. We have organized our thinking into 7 truths. Each truth has a truth and then an action that the truth drives, and then some detail about launching the steps that are taken and required to realize that action, and a graphic to bring the truth to mind. The first truth is that an organization exists to solve a problem for some specific population of people who have the problem. If you take that as an axiomatic truth, then before you make any change, it really is a good idea to get everybody involved in the change in the organization and leading the change to be clear about the same set of facts about the current organization. So we say that drives you to need to know whose problem you solve. So who are you serving? What problem do they have? What's your solution? And then we can get into how you go about doing that, and then how well you do that relative to others doing it. This triptych over here is designed to bring to mind the first 3 of these, the what, who, why. So we take that and turn it into a template and ask folks to fill it out with what service or product their organization delivers to whom, and not just a broad category title. Like, we don't just say telecoms or banks. We say what person or what position in the bank or in the telecom do you deliver their product or service to? And then why does that person you deliver it to choose to purchase that solution from you? It's obviously better, cheaper, faster than other alternatives, and it's got to be to some important, pervasive, and persistent problem. But it turns out that it is harder than you think to answer these 3 questions, and forces the thinking of the organization to get it right. So what we do is we ask each leader and their top team. I'm getting a lot of background noise there, Kim. I'm going to mute some people here. Okay. We have a template where you can fill this out online, and you have the leader fill it out on their own, and you have the top 5 people in the organization fill it out on their own, and then we compare results. And then one thing you might think about is how often are those results or those templates filled out in exactly the same way? Well, it turns out they rarely are unless they've been through the exercise with us. So let's look at what let's look at an example. Somebody tell us in the chat what it is that an organization everybody knows. Let's take Facebook. What does Facebook provide? Kim, maybe you can read me a couple of answers and I'll record them here.
Two connections.
What, T-O or T-W-O?
Two people said connections.
Oh, I
So
see.
Rick said a way to reach out and connect.
What else? Anything else?
We have a lot of connecting.
Connecting. Okay, so let's go with connection. Who does Facebook do it for? Who is the customer of Facebook?
Rick says advertisers.
Anybody else?
I would say the world.
People.
People, yes.
And why? Why do people choose to be a customer of Facebook?
Because the young people started doing it and then it moved to all people from there. That's what Lisa says. Oh, Janet. Hello, Janet from South Africa. Janet said, because we're all suckers.
Okay. All right. We could keep going with this, but let's take a look here. Who pays money to Facebook? That would be the customer, right? Because a customer would be someone whose problem you solved so that they decided it's worth it for them to pay you to give them that solution. Who pays?
The advertisers.
Right. So advertisers is a customer. What are people to Facebook? They don't pay, right? Just you and I don't pay when we use Facebook. So
We're the users.
We're users, right?
Right.
So people are not the customer. People are users. What is it that Facebook is providing? It's providing access to the users or the people to the advertisers, right? And why is that? Why do advertisers pay Facebook to get at people?
As Karina said, to have access to the community.
Access, not just to any community, right? It's to a very highly segmented community, right? They know Facebook knows a lot about their users, and advertisers like that because they can ask Facebook to let them communicate directly with a very specific targeted population of users. So that's bingo, you've got it. So Facebook's product is users, access to people. Advertisers pay an enormous amount of money to give them access to exactly those people on the Facebook platform that they want to talk to or communicate with. So you can see how it's a little bit counterintuitive. So what we ask each person in the program to do and work with to do is to answer these questions for themselves. And here's an example. So what we'd like to do is have one of you, Lisa, I see that you're on. Maybe you could open up your mic and read this for us. This company is called AMC. They're a construction company in this area that I've worked with. And we asked the leaders of the company to fill out this template. Could you please read what it is that AMC Co. provides?
Residential remodeling services to homeowners living in San Francisco.
One thing, Lisa, as you're reading it, sorry, everybody listen carefully and read along with Lisa and think about what questions do you have? Does it make sense? What comes to your mind as you hear this being read? And what we're going to ask you to do in a minute is make some notes in the chat about it. So just think about it as it's, don't do that yet. Just listen right now. Lisa, go ahead and start over if you would. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Residential remodeling services to homeowners living in San Francisco. We have revisited the industry standard way of signing up clients with a heavy focus on pre-construction services. We create a team, pre-project, homeowners, designers, and builders We can meet the client's need while staying within budget and time constraints, along with giving insight of potential problems, cost overruns, etc., that we foresee.
Great, thank you. Roland Livingston, would you unmute and read who AMC Co. provides what we just heard Lisa read?
For residential homeowners and light commercial business owners, designers, architects, engineers, and for current clients.
Great, thank you. Remember, listen and see what questions come to mind, what thoughts you have. Rick, I see you. Could you unmute and read why those folks that we just heard out of the who choose to pay AMC Co. for the services that Lisa told us about? We're not hearing you, Rick. Your microphone must not be working. Diane, would you like to do that? Okay, let me switch it over to Kim. Why don't you read this for us?
Sure, I'm happy to. Our skill set and personalities suit working with end users because there is a large gap in knowledge and systems for all. Independent design professionals for outlining a scope of work that fits the end user and desired budget, and to keep relationships continually.
Okay, let's take these each one at a time now, and let me draw out from you comments in the chat. So what comes to mind when you see this? What works for you? What questions do you have? What does it seem like maybe a little bit off? And Kim, you can read what people are saying in the chat. Sorry to make you work, but this is the way the program works. We want to give you a taste for it and see what you come up with. What you do, what it turns out is you learn by studying others and learning to comment on others how to do a better job at your own W's. Kim, what are you seeing?
Lisa says the what doesn't feel specific enough.
That's pretty broad, right? Go ahead.
Leslie says it's trying to be all things to all people. Yeah, it seems too broad.
Too broad.
Yep.
Seems like a lot of words as well, right?
Alex says the what includes info on the who and why.
That's an interesting crossovers here. So that it could be a little tighter, right? Maybe some of what's in the what could really be somewhere else. So it really does answer what in this first three words. We have residential remodeling services, but this to homeowners living in San Francisco is not a what at all, is it? That's a who. So that should be down here. What else?
Janet says it's generally a bit messy and
Could be
incoherent.
Tighter. Could be tighter. Well, let's see what could we do to help them. What would we recommend they do? Speaking of cross fertilization here, we have a who up here. This bottom down here is meeting the client needs while staying within budget and time constraints. That's a why, isn't it? What's it doing up there?
Yeah.
And then we even have some stuff in here that we didn't even ask about yet. But this is a how. We create a team project, homeowners, down in village. We can meet them. So that's a how. So that's sort of a different whole question entirely. So what we see is this could probably be a little bit tighter as you're suggesting. What about the who? What would be different? What comes to mind about the who? Anything?
It's a lot of people.
It's pretty broad, right? So you haven't been that specific. I mean, okay, who are you really targeting is not really clear here.
Right.
How about this, designer, architects, engineers, what relative to the residential homeowners and light commercial business? What do you think about that? Question that comes to mind is, are designers and architects, engineers paying customers? Mm-hmm. Or are they just part of the channel? I mean, are they the way you get to the customers, or do you bring them in to help better serve the customers?
They may be the users, right?
They could be. Yeah, they're in the parallel case to Facebook. They're like part of the picture in an important way, but they're not payers. If they're payers, then what are they paying us for? They're probably not paying us to remodel their homes, right? Unless maybe they did. But it's something different. So there may be a different www that should be applied to them. So either
Roland and Janet say, it seems like more like a channel to get it
exactly.
Yeah.
So we talk about the different operating models, you know, product, service, channel, operation, and exchange, and you would build the business differently depending on what those you really are. So there may be two businesses here, one for residential homeowners, one for designer, architects, and engineers. Then on this current clients, well, that's, as you said, that opens it up to be, well, anybody. If anybody is a current client, but not one of these two, what are they? So let's be specific about that. And maybe we don't even want to be selling more of those. So you can see how it could lead to an interesting discussion. And also, of course, this who is less precise than the who implied up here about homeowners living in San Francisco. Why isn't that part of what's going on here? And then what income or wealth profile do we target? What certain stage or age or set of experiences have they had that qualify them to be good customers? And one last one, let's look at the why. Anybody want to comment on that? One that comes up often is that our skill set and personalities suit working with end users. Well, what are those that make you so specially appreciated by end users? I should be drawn out in some way, don't you think? And then, because
Lisa says it's a bit ambiguous.
Yeah, like what are you really saying here? It's clear they haven't really thought it through, and that's probably really important. And one of the things they should do is think it through a little bit more clearly. Why do people want this? Why is that important? So we're all trying to do the same thing and play into the same market in the same way. It crystallizes our messaging, drives our marketing, and it makes it easier for our employees to all be on the same page and serve our customers maximally.
I really like Peter. Ken says, what is the pain that they want to solve?
Right. That's what this should get to.
Yeah.
What is the real pain? Okay. So this is a real example from a real leadership team that went through this. I've actually made a hybrid of what the two principals had to say. We went through a process like this. They came out with a revised WWW after that exercise, which was much tighter. And you know, there's no right or wrong to these, and they always change as things change, and they get better as you work and tighter as you go. The most important thing here is that the two of them finally had something that they agreed on, because they were quite different before. You're welcome to look at this later, and I encourage you to do so. I'm not going to go through it here, but the point is, there's a very straightforward process for taking what's in the heads of different people and using the templates to make the implicit explicit so that it can be shared and worked on with each other without regard to who said it. It's working the point, not the person. So I want you to know that we are happy to do a round of this for your WWW. So we sent you an advanced exercise with a link, and we're going to put the link in the chat right now for you to later go to the template and put in your own WWW, and we'll mark it up like you see here with a couple 3 points just to give you the idea. Even better, if there's 2 or 3 people in your top team, have each one do it and then compare notes. And if you do have multiple that get sent in, each one will get sent back to you, and you can collect them from each other and consolidate, or I can send you yours back from the other ones on your team if you like. And I can't promise, but I can guarantee the odds of success go way up if you do what we're describing here, because 2 things are going to go wrong. It's hard for people to keep 3 things in their head at the same time, so they tend to adopt a perspective of 1 or 2 of the 3 dimensions and then optimize for those. So they're either overly invested in what they do, but not with why people want them to do it. And that ends up to underperforming. And if you do work hard and get clear, it ends up making a big difference. The other thing that can go wrong is you have and sometimes multiple WWWs, so that a single small business might actually be doing multiple things at the same time. Like this organization here that I'm going to show you. Before we worked with them, they were struggling at $3 to $6 million a year for many years. So it's an offer to be acquired in year 6 for $9 million by a larger firm. They walked away from that deal saying they wanted $12 million. That's when they hired us, and we worked with them to identify 11 different WWWs in what they were doing. And they were a 20-person firm. It's nuts, right? So basically their WWW was, we do stuff for money, which is just too high a level. You can't turn that into scale. So what we said was, pick one And anyone, doesn't matter. And that'll be the one that we turn into a real business. They managed to eventually decide to do that. We worked with them. And then just a few years later, the profile looked like this. And you can see it took off. And ultimately, instead of being sold for $9 million and desiring 12, they were sold for $34 million just a few years later, which was, of course, a multiple of their original expectations and the original ask. So that's the sort of thing that happens when you get that clear about what you're trying to do. The theory being, if you can make $3 million or $6 million, you ought to be able to make 30 or 60 or 600. Because if enough people want it for that, there's probably a lot more out there. If we get crystal clear about what we're doing for whom and why they want it, we can then develop it into a business. So the point of this section is that's just a small part of the first truth and what we do with it in the program. We want you to take away the sense that preparing a WWW seems easy, but it's actually more of a challenge than it first seems. And it's really not hard. It's actually straightforward for a team to work on and upgrade their WWW, but you really have to want to do it and you need to drive to do it. And one of the things we do in the program is help you learn how to do that and to help drive you to do that as part of the program. So we actually work on your WWW in the program. And then you share it with other teams in the same cohort if we're doing it on a cohort basis. And the question is it worth doing? Well, it turns out that it is worth the trouble. And you begin to see how just a little bit of dissonance in perspective can lead to a lot of dysfunctionality and underperforming. And then our axiomatic truth, our axiom for this truth is that alignment follows clarity reached jointly. So the idea is by working together, a team gets clear and then aligned, and that stimulates top performance. Okay, so that's a little tease for truth one. And then we spent a good bit of time on that. We're going to fly through the other truths here just to give you a little bit of a sense for things. The second truth is that it takes a team. Let me ask you real quick in the chat, how many arrows do you see moving up and to the right in this picture? Kim, what are you seeing? How many arrows do you see moving up and to the right?
We have two different answers, 3 and 1.
Okay, here's 3, 1, 2, right? Yep. Each of these is an arrow.
Someone said 4.
Ah, so here's another arrow, right? So there's 3 arrows turning into 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's what we're looking for, is that super arrow that comes from a group of very highly professional, skilled people working together, deploying their great strengths all in the same direction. Again, I might ask, how often does that happen in your experience? Because if even just one person is slightly off, the tension and disruption gets magnified and multiplied as it cascades into the organization. You get confusion reigning. So the other thing is we want to point out here is it's not just one Superman that makes all this happen. It really does take a team of diverse thinking, diverse perspective, diverse skills. There's too many things you need to be good at in running a business and scaling for one person to make it happen. So our axiom here is, okay, take a bunch of strong people and get them aligned. And then as a leader, your job is to decide what kind of leader to be and to collect followers. And we look at what is your way of leading? How do you decide how to lead? Are you like a military leader saying, follow me? Are you a shepherd that moves people along? Are you an icon? Do you carry the team on your back? Are you a teacher? Do you have a league of strong players? How do you think most people decide what kind of leader to be? Anybody want to throw that into the chat?
That's a really interesting question, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure many people really decide.
That's right. What happens? They just do, right? How does it happen? Whatever's worked for them up to then, that's what they do, right? What we want you to do is turn that into a conscious choice. See, wait a minute, I could lead the way I've always done it. Is that the right and best way to do it given what? 3 things. What am I trying to do? What do I have to work with? And my preferences. Do I like leading that way? right? So there might be a situation that calls for you to be a different kind of leader than you've been, and you just don't like that. Well, maybe it's best if you turn that over to someone else.
Roland and Karina say, based on what's worked well in the past.
Right, that's the default scenario that most leaders take. And what we want to do is bring to the front of their thinking, of a leader's thinking, that it is a choice. You decide how to lead. And if you decide by letting it just be by fiat or whatever happens, that's your decision. That's fine, but there could be a better decision. And if you factor in what it is you're trying to do, the resources you have to work with, that could be time, money, people, skills, access to outside agents and so on. And very importantly is preferences. What do you really like? What do you want to be? I personally have led all the different ways depicted here, and there are many others. These are just ones that I've experienced. And I would say, when I did them, they felt right, but now I wouldn't prefer some. I would prefer others more than others.
Peter?
Yeah.
Janet says she is working hard this year on becoming a completely different type of leader because of the strategic change.
Good, and that's a good. You're doing it consciously. You're aware of it, and you're making an investment to make sure that you're doing what you think is the right thing and with the highest probability of success. So I wish you luck in that, and encourage you to share the results. Okay, so this is the section on building that top team and getting them aligned, and then we have planned change. And the truth here is that context matters. What do we mean by that? What we mean is when you go off to the mountain with your team and you come up with a list of initiatives, it's just a list of initiatives. And what it takes to make those initiatives drive interventions that become a different world, that's getting into planned change and change management. And now we're taking that idea and that idea to benefit cycle, and what does it take to make that real? And what we want to suggest here is that not only do you need to decide what to change, but you need to decide why it has to change. How is it now? How will it be when you've changed it? And why? What is it that's driving you to change? What's really good thing happens if you change? What really bad thing happens if you don't? And then we point out that every single change initiative is really best thought of as a triple helix of evolution. There's a change in systems, change in processes, and a change in behaviors and the way you think. And that some changes are more one sort of those three than another, but almost every change has at least some element of all three. And what we tend to focus on, because people spend a lot of money on it and the stakes are really high, are change initiatives that involve a heavy degree of change in all three: systems, process, and behavior. And we call those transformational change. And what we realize is that, like a lot of organizations, leaderships, and teams go, they prepare a bunch of data and they go off site with their top team and they come up with this list. You can see this little list here of all the things they're going to do. And what they imagine happens after that is that a lot of activity plays out, and sometime later the benefits are realized and the circle is completed. But what really happens? A lot of times you get this: nothing, right? And you end up having the same meeting again next year. Why is that? First of all, have you ever had that happen? And why does it happen? What we find is most people say, yeah, I've been there on that. And then if you think about it, you can read a lot of books on why it happens, right?
Yeah, several people are saying lack of follow through.
Right, you can see it, right? That nobody made anything happen. Nobody was assigned to do anything. So what we say, and we'll get back to that in a second, but what we say is that change initiatives are more than just a list. And you can't come out of an offsite with a list of things to do and expect it to happen unless you first remember all the things that surround, or the context for that list and the items on it. How are things now? Why do they need to change? How will they be when they're changed? And then what we need to do to get the change, and what's going to be hard about that. So what we do is put this change framework, this is the story or the storyboard around a change or even a set of changes. And then what we do is take each of those and tell a more detailed story using the same outline, the same template. So we take each item in this list and tell the current case and target barriers for each of those change initiatives. So this is a higher level summary. And then we say, okay, let's get down to the details. Let's take each line item here. And when do we do this? We start doing this at the offsite. So a lot of offsites end up with a list and they think they're done. And what we do is say, that's really the start. So maybe we need another offsite, or maybe we need to extend the offsite. And if I'm using offsite sort of sort of metaphorically, it's like whatever your process is, it could actually be in the office, but it's another step in what you're doing. So the arc of energy needs to be rising when you come up with the list, not diminishing as if, we're done, let's go have a beer. It's, we've just begun, let's get going. And that mindset is what gets into here. And then finally, you have to turn all of these, as you just said, into something actually happening. So we have what we call the initiative to action. So these exhibits are called change frameworks. And then for each item in the change framework, we need to launch an initiative to get that to happen. So we have to say, well, what is this initiative? Who is in charge of keeping an eye on it? Who's in charge of running it? Who is assigned to work on it? And what happens if we do, and how are we going to come at it? What are we going to watch to know how well we're doing? And what are we worried about? So we probably say, well, we haven't quite fleshed this out yet, and maybe this, maybe that. We want to get a first cut at all that thinking while the team is still working at the highest level in the strategy setting mode. And this is how we end up launching, taking an item on a list and launching it into a beginning that ends up driving a set of processes that we will then govern and guide to make sure they stay on track in this using this next truth. So the next truth, yeah?
I love, Janet says in the chat box, it takes new energy to get an alternative outcome.
Well, right. And then what we're doing is saying that alternative energy, first you got to see that it needs to be there, and then you got to do things to make it happen. So I used to use my OD consultant, who I had so much value from. I actually brought them in and hired them as part of my team to make sure that we did things to not wind down, but begin to launch. And this led to these systematic interventions that essentially apply the behavioral incentives that you described. Now, most people I work with, we don't talk about that. We just do it, right? You all know why it works and how to get people to think about it that way. And we all need that. But if you focus on the OD of it, it doesn't happen. If you focus on, hey, here's what we need to do to get this to happen, it just works. And that's what we're really doing here. So, for example, you people in your field have written books about why things don't work. So here's Cotter's 8 reasons why initiatives fail to achieve their full potential. The urgency wasn't really there. The guiding coalition didn't come together. No one sort of got on board to go make it happen. The communication wasn't clear, wasn't shared. It didn't get out there. No one actually was assigned to do anything. And then they tried to do too much rather than getting short-term wins and went for this big home run thing that didn't work. And then what little wins we had weren't consolidated to become part of the way things are. So which of these do you think most often what do you think is the main reason initiatives go off track? This is Cotter's 8 reasons. What do you think? What's the main reason things go off track? Getting any input?
I would say developing a shared vision and then communicating it. I think a lot of times.
These are all good, right? Every one of these is good, right?
Yeah. Lisa says lack of communicating your vision.
Okay. So another guy, not Cotter, but another guy named Capers Jones in the 90s studied 1,000 change initiatives and said the #1 reason they go awry is lack of management attention. Because if management was focused on it, as somebody said earlier, right? If somebody was watching this and said, you know what, we're going off base because we aren't communicating the vision, or we're going off base because nobody seems to think it's urgent. Whatever the thing is, if management saw it, it would do something to make a change, to get it back on track. And we kind of like that and say that there's a way to institutionalize management paying attention in the form of what we call an executive review. So management's instinct is to go up and come up with another idea while that one is being implemented, or to just assume once they've thought of it and launched it that it's just happening. But the reality is it takes oversight. And that's what we say, do and review. Things go better when you pay attention. So that's where the truth comes in. It pays to pay attention. So what we do is institutionalize paying attention in an efficient way. And we'll show you how to do this in the program. But each initiative has an executive review process that makes sure a lot of things happen in the course of time to make those initiatives turn ideas into benefits for the organization.
Peter?
Yep.
Roland says you need to empower your people. And I think that is really important.
Well, it's right here, empower people to act on the vision. So yes, that is one of the many things you need to do.
Yep.
And this would make sure if you were management, you would say, well, have we empowered our people? Are people making progress? Why not? They're not empowered, let's empower them. So whatever the reason is, we're gonna make it happen. We say it's up to you as the leader to make sure none of these are a problem because you've paid attention and institutionalized the process for so doing. And that's what we show you how to do. Now, another truth is that no leader succeeds alone. Every leader needs to get help, and it's a skill to get good at getting help. And we have a systematic way of helping you to build a set of connections that lead to the kind of help you need to be successful. So here you are as a leader in your internal team and in the team of teams underneath. And what you want to do is set up an accountability board, which is somewhere you can go back to and say, here's what we said we're going to do. Here's what we did to do it. Here's what happened when we did it. Here's what we learned from that. Here's what we plan to do next. Ask us questions to be sure you understand what we're saying, and then ask more questions to push up our thinking and give us your best advice. Then we go away and we work on what you've told us. In a month or 2 or 3 later, we have the next board meeting and we give you an update using the same agenda. And that virtuous cycle leads to improved performance in a sort of a systematic do and review process for the organization as a whole. And then you say, well, whatever it is your team needs to know that you don't know that's important, go find someone who knows a lot about that and tap into them. Let these be experts in the subject matter that's important to you and your organization. But God forbid, please don't turn them into board members, because they're good at what they do, but they may not be good at being general management board meeting members. Now, most high-powered board members can also be advisors in some form or another. But what most leaders we find do, if they don't think about it, they know they don't know stuff, so they go find people to give them input, and they ask them to do this accountability board function, which they're not prepared to do, and you have a dysfunctionality here. So we separate out accountability board from subject matter experts and help you architect that for success. And then we have, this is where you as OD practitioners help us as leaders by helping us know how we're impacting the world in which we're working. When I said this that way to that person and it caused them to bristle, I didn't even know I did that. Please help me see that. And then please help me change my behavior and know that it's a choice to behave that way in the future or to do it differently. And then conscious use of self, team building, sort of a T group by inserting a coach in and letting the coach see me work with my team. The coach can then give me incredible feedback. All of these are tools and techniques that we teach people, encourage them to practice and demonstrate all of this in the program. And then there's becoming a member of a peer group. So we invite each leader to find a group of peers that are doing something similar stage where they can share and compare a non-competitive environment and hold themselves accountable in a different way than these folks. These folks will be interested in you as a person. Are you being true to yourself, to your values, to what you said you want to do? And in a way, providing sort of a vitality that you just can't get anywhere else. And if you imagine meeting once a month for most of the day with the same group of people that's facilitated by a professional coach or a meeting chair, great things can happen. And I personally have experienced this for decades and really encourage every leader to join a peer group. And this is gonna be true whether you're, a CEO peer group, of which there's, Vistage and Renaissance, there's thousands of these groups in the world. It's not too hard to find them. But even if you're like a technology person or a procurement person, there are peer groups for you too. And if you can't find one, go to your association and ask to be networked to others, or start one yourself. By your association, yeah.
I love, in response to the Cotter steps, Janet says, it's her opinion that people do not resist change. They resist pain and loss. And I think that's where the peer group could be really
Sure, good point. That's great. I think it's, I always said as a leader, I don't like, everybody says it's lonely at the top. And I always say, it's as lonely as you let it be. So what I'm doing is architecting a cocoon of support for I'm with my team. It's not just me. I don't worry alone. It's with my team. We're all in this together. That's changed the game for me to know that it's just not about me. And then all of these are contributing towards a cocoon of support that provide the opposite of loneliness to a leader. So in addition to the peer group, we would really encourage you to join a learning community, such as ISODC,
Yes.
such as ASP, ACMP, NRI, NARI. There are all kinds of these things out there. And there are hundreds or thousands of people doing things in your field. You want to get the energy from that. You want to contribute to that. You want to draw on it. You want to be part of it. And maybe you go to the annual conference for your industry, all exciting. And we encourage everybody to set up a cocoon of support like this.
And that's isodc.org, right?
For you folks, yes, but for everybody's got their own. We encourage you to be part of it. Okay, so the final truth is that growth is good, which drives you to grow. Why? To increase the value of what you're doing, the impact. If you're doing something good, why not do it to scale? Whether you get paid for it or if it's a nonprofit, doesn't matter. It's good, do it. And then for opportunity, the people in your organization will grow and to be able to do new jobs if you're growing. If not, they're stuck in the same job for their whole career. That doesn't always most people don't find that rewarding. So the opportunity, and then also for civic contribution, so that you become civic leaders, come from successful organizations, and they contribute. Successful organizations pay taxes, create jobs, drive the economy, and help the world be a better place. This is our most popular exhibit on our site. There's more hits on this post that describes this than any other over all time. And what we do is help you see that an organization evolves through these 5 more or less well-defined stages, from an idea to, okay, got something going, let's make it a real business that's up and running and growing. And now we got to worry about how we're going to drive new growth because it's a mature organization. And each of these has a different set of characteristics and concerns. You know, in the concept stage, you're trying to say, how do I get something going here? I need an idea, I need some money, I need a team. Here's a question for you. Which of these is the most important? The idea, the money, or the team? Give me a readout on the chat real quick.
I say the team.
What do others say?
We have another answer, team. Roland says the concept. Another team.
Okay, here's an answer. It's a trick question. Depends on what you have. If you have the team, you need them, and the idea, you need the money. If you have the money, you want the idea and the team, right? So whatever you have defines what you need. The point is you need all 3, and you need them at the right time. And then once you get going, your quest is to prove that your idea has legs, right? You have some clients, you have some employees, maybe you get some money or some revenue. You want to prove that your idea is good. And then you have a quest for survival. Where do I get the next person to honor the commitments I just made? Where do I get the next dollar to stay afloat? And the problem is usually focus. Like that company we work with that had 11 different WWWs, that's clearly a focus problem. And once they learned to focus on the one that became the idea we wanted to scale, it was straightforward. But you are usually hand to mouth and trying to say, I got to take any money I can get just to stay alive. And what we want to do is get you over this hump here. So you have a plan, a team, that everybody knows what they're supposed to do, and they're driven to deploy their great strengths towards doing it. And then they execute for growth and performance consistently and predictably. And then we help you learn how to set metrics of performance that you watch regularly to track and develop a virtuous management and control process that leads to improvements in the doing, selling, and growing of the organization as it scales. And once you're starting to scale, you're looking at, okay, how do I I'm a going concern. I want to maybe do a sale. I want to sell the organization, or I want to finance it, or I want to go public. And why? Because I want to generate a payoff for those who help create this value. And my problem is usually managing growth. There's so much going on, so many different places, and we're really hitting it now. And then when you're mature, the question is, how do you avoid falling into the trap of being routine? You worry about driving new growth and not being complacent, which basically means starting this whole process over again. People ask, when is the right and best time to study this, learn it, and apply it? Here's the answer. Whenever you do, you'll wish you had done it sooner. Even if you're a concept company and you're on a late track, even if you're out here a very successful company, you'll wish you had done it sooner. So the idea is jump in, get trained in this, and then deploy and apply what you learn as it makes the most sense for you. And we help you do that by realizing that, yeah, there's 7 truths, and they're all simple, disarmingly simple, some say, but they're not easy. There's a lot to be done in an organization to architect and drive the change. So you think of it as, okay, here's our leader, here are the 7 truths, and each of these arrows represents a continuum of maturity in implementing the things you need to do in light of each truth. And at some point in time, you are currently at some stage of maturity along each of those 7 dimensions. And you want ultimately to be further along so that eventually you look more like the green web around here. So the question you'll have is, which one of these should we work on first? And what we do is help you come up with a way to figure that out. So which of these most currently constrains your performance and your growth? And then how do you decide which to work on and then what you do to work on it? And that's what we pick in the class. We pick one thing to work on to show you, and you apply it as you go, because it's not an academic exercise. We're actually taking you and your business and applying what you're learning to that and letting you share what you're doing for feedback in the business, so in the class. So it's what we call an experiential learning model where you're learning and applying all at the same time. Because we're running a little bit tight, I'm going to just fly through
Peter, those last 2 slides were just incredible.
Okay, thank you. Let me just say that I'm going to give me a minute on the program here. What is it? It's 10 sessions once a week, 2 hours each, instructor led. Joyce and I lead it. And then there's interactive online is the way we deliver it routinely now. We can still do it in class if you want, but most people now want to do it virtually. That's so much better. Each session, there's preparation, and you'll learn new content. You apply it to a practice case on your own, then with your team, and then you apply it to your business, and then share it with others in other teams in the program, and then with outside executives, and then with instructors. And the idea is to come up with a plan of action and the tools to implement and make planned change. And what ultimately, sub rosa, we don't lead with this, but it's what's happening, is you're really using applied behavioral theory to make all this work. And we're using an online learning platform supplied by a major university.
Peter,
Yeah.
Where can people learn more about this and your book?
Yeah, in the chat, Joyce will put a link to the landing page for this program, as well as the link to the enrollment application form. And on that site, you can also, of course, hit the book page and you'll get access to a way to order the book. Following eating our own dog food here, let's say, who is this for? It's for leaders and teams of 3 to 7 people who run an organization. And they could be private equity backed and you know, they're professionally financed, we call that. And what they want to do is meet the targets that they've set for their investor ahead of time, and they want to beat the thresholds of returns that they've committed to. Baby boomers who are owner, founder, operators of their own businesses, they're ready to transition or get ready to transition, but their organizations aren't ready for them to go away yet. So that's another target market for us. The startup entrepreneur who wants to set themselves up to impress investors that they're ready to go from PowerPoint to production and drive to scale. And then leaders of any significant internal organization, unit, or function that wants to improve performance and grow faster.
And Peter, we don't say, but this is really true for those people who are on who work with nonprofits.
Right.
That although the focus of this has been giving examples from business, it really works extremely well for nonprofit organizations. Your metrics are different.
Sure. Nonprofits, government agencies, religious organizations, it doesn't really matter to us. As you all know, as organization development persons, it's all about people. It's all about how to get people to work better together. And that's what we do. You
guys are doing some great work.
We like it. We love it. That's why we do it. Let me just say that the reason people tell us that they're glad they took the course is that it put them on track to make the specific change they had in mind, which is usually something to drive better performance and faster growth. It also helps them develop their messages. So you see this core messages. What is it how do we talk about ourselves with each other, with recruits, with partners, with customers, with prospects, with our families? It just crystallizes all that messages and lets you spend your time on other things like putting them to work.
And for someone who wants to go it alone, not that we recommend that, your book is available online, right?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
And
Roland has a question. Do you train others to deliver this process?
We do. That is, if you want to be on that track, we actually have signed a principal consultant to work with teams to help a team take what you're learning in the program and apply it to their case.
Okay.
The
So
principal consultant is really on a track to help the client, but learn the content and the method. If they would then go on and perhaps be a co-instructor, and then we would train them to instruct on their own, and we do set that up for you.
Thank you so much.
We actually added the principal consultant role in there, and there's a perfect role for an OD consultant who has a client team. You get to participate for free, and
Right.
you're not considered one of the 3 to 7 people, and you can take that role, or we can assign someone to it who knows the program.
I know you want to wrap up. Let me just tell you, this slide here is the overview. If you click this link, you'll get a walkthrough of this overview of the details of the program. I just wanted to show you here that we're using Kotter's framework and basically what we're doing in the program in sessions 2 through 5, session 6 and session 7, teaching you how to basically climb these steps that Kotter lays out for us. Here's a video on what a past cohort of participants has to say about the program, which you're welcome to watch later. It's
Yeah, I don't think we have time today.
No, I won't do it now. But then if you want, there's also a learn more and apply to enroll, the pricing. There's a session starting, this session is cohort 5, starts in early February. And then once that fills up, we'll set up another one, probably a month or so later. If not, the next one is scheduled for July.
I like the ISODC discount.
Yeah, there's a discount for anybody who puts this code in the group code field, 20% off of these prices. And there's a closing poll here, which will send you all of this in the follow-up. We'll send you a link to the recording as well as the PDF of the slides, and all these links will be hot in the PDF. There's also a closing poll. We'll give you a link to that. And don't forget, I'll give you a link to the www template for you to fill out, and then we'll give you feedback on that if you like.
That's in the chat now if people want to get that. All 3, there's 3 links there from the chat.
Okay, Kim?
Thank you so much. And within the next day, we'll have information on our March webinar, which is with Dr. Karina Jensen on leading global innovation. So we have another one coming up, but I think you have given us so much today to think about and really chew on. Thank you so much.
Well, it's our pleasure. We're glad to have been here and wish you the best.
All right.
And hope to see you.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Kim.